Sunday mornings in Savannah usually carried the smell of sea air and jasmine from the neighbor's porch, but today the house held only silence. A strange, weighted silence. No music drifting from the kitchen. No creak of the floorboard outside Reed's room. Just stillness, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to break. I stepped out of my bedroom and into the hallway. Barefoot, my robe tugged tight around my waist. The living room looked untouched, the old ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles. I passed the worn photograph of Reed on the mantel, age 5, missing teeth, his arms around my neck, and kept walking. In the kitchen, I stopped. On the dining table, propped against the empty coffee mug he'd used the night before, was a sheet of lined notebook paper. His handwriting was as sharp and angular as I remembered from high school. Goodbye. You were never my family. The words didn't hit like a bullet. They didn't even sting. I stood there for a moment, looking at the familiar loops of his R's and the way he still curled the Y at the end of family, like a careless tale. I'd seen that signature before. On birthday cards. On checks I'd co-signed. On apology notes tucked under my door. My phone buzzed, then again, and again. I picked it up. Fraud alerts lit the screen, checking account, retirement fund, credit card. Unauthorized withdrawals. Account access changed. Overdraft protection triggered. The buzzes came faster than I could swipe them away. Still, my hands didn't tremble. I placed the phone on the table next to the note, walked to the kettle, and poured hot water into my mug. I took a sip of tea, let the steam warm my face, and whispered to the quiet room. He walked right into it. The first time Reed called me Delia instead of Mom. He was 17 and angry about something small, laundry, I think. I'd folded his clothes wrong or used the wrong detergent. The word slid out of his mouth like it had always belonged there. I remember standing at the foot of the stairs holding his t-shirts in a neat stack and feeling something quiet snap inside me. He didn't look back when he said it. Just shut his door and left me standing in the hallway with arms full of clean cotton and silence. But it didn't start there. It started 8 years earlier when his father, my husband Everett, was killed in a car crash on Highway 17. 1 minute we were planning a beach trip. The next I was standing in a morgue staring at a man I loved more than I thought possible, now lying still under a white sheet. Reed was only 9 then, too young to understand the finality but old enough to cry himself hoarse into my lap for nights after. I dropped out of nursing school the week after the funeral. Couldn't balance classes, grief, and a grieving child. I took cleaning jobs instead. Offices, rental homes, hospital wings after hours. Whatever paid steady. At night, I'd come home to fix us dinner, help with homework, wash uniforms, and tuck him in with a song his father used to hum off key. He called me Mom, without thinking, for years. At 10, at 12, even at 16, when he got his first heartbreak. But by the time college came, something shifted. He stopped asking for rides. Stopped inviting me to school events. The day he left for university, I handed him an envelope with grocery money and the keys to the used Civic I'd saved a year to buy. He hugged me with one arm phone in the other. I didn't expect a thank you. I didn't get one. When graduation came, I wasn't invited. I saw a photo on social media, him in the cap and gown, smiling between 2 friends I didn't know. I zoomed in looking for anything familiar. There was nothing. No mention. No mother. But still, I kept trying. I wired money when rent ran late. I called on birthdays, even when they went to voicemail. I stayed quiet when he missed holidays. Because love doesn't stop just because it isn't returned. And maybe that's why I didn't stop watching. Not when the questions started. Not when the tone shifted. Not when he moved back in and called me Delia, like it meant nothing at all. Reed moved back into the house the fall after his second job fizzled out. Said he needed a reset. said things in the tech world were fluid, and he just needed a few months to get his bearings. I told him the guest room was his. It had always been his, even when he stopped calling it home. At first, I tried to believe it, that he was tired, that life had knocked him down and he needed grace. I cooked for him like I used to, let him sleep late, let his laundry pile. I remembered Everett once telling me, when a man doesn't know who he is, sometimes he just needs to be reminded someone sees him. But then he started asking questions. One night after dinner, he lingered in the kitchen, drying a dish he hadn't washed. "Hey," he said casually, "do you know where the house deed is? I saw something online about property tax exemptions." Another time, "What bank do you use for your retirement account again? Maybe I can help consolidate." He offered to help with online bills, said paper mail was outdated. But then envelopes started disappearing, statements I knew had been delivered never making it to the stack near the door. I asked once. He said he tossed the junk. Smiled like he was doing me a favor. I didn't argue. I just smiled back, wiped the counter, and made a mental note to call Chloe the next morning. That's when I started writing things down. Dates, times, odd comments. I made digital copies of every financial record I had and stored them on a flash drive hidden in the lining of my winter coat. I logged into my online accounts from the library downtown, changed passwords, set alerts. I didn't accuse, I didn't confront. I just watched, listened, learned. Because there's a difference between being quiet and being blind. And the night he asked if I'd ever considered updating my will, said it with a laugh, like it was just a casual suggestion. I realized something I didn't want to admit. He wasn't trying to rebuild. He was circling. Saturday night, Reed stood behind me while I rinsed dishes, his voice softer than usual. "I'll cook breakfast tomorrow," he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I flinched, just barely, but he didn't notice. He'd never kissed me that way before. Not since he was a boy in sneakers too big for his feet running around the backyard with grass stains on his knees. I nodded and handed him a towel. He hummed as he dried a plate, then wandered off to his room phone, glowing in his hand. The hallway light clicked off behind him. I stood in the kitchen a while longer, letting the silence return. I didn't sleep much that night. In the morning, the house felt colder than usual. I reached for my cardigan and walked into the kitchen barefoot. The light was off. No smell of coffee, no clatter of pans, just stillness. And the note. Folded once, sitting where his phone charger had been. I didn't rush to open it. I already knew. I'd known for weeks. I slid into the chair and unfolded the paper. "Goodbye. You were never my family." The words weren't angry. They were flat, final, like someone closing a door on a room they'd never planned to enter again. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up with a wall of alerts. My checking account emptied. Retirement account unauthorized access. Credit card declined. Every number I saw confirmed what I'd already felt beneath my skin. He was gone, but the tears didn't come. The devastation I might have expected, the shaking hands, the collapse in the chair, the disbelief, none of it arrived. Instead, I opened the drawer, pulled out the black flash drive, and placed it on the table beside the note. It was time to activate the plan. 3 months ago, I sat across from Chloe in the back corner of the community center after Sunday service. The folding chairs were uncomfortable and the lemonade too sweet, but her voice was steady and sharp, just the way I needed it to be. "I don't want to believe he'd do it," I told her. "You don't have to believe it," she replied. "You just have to be ready if he does." That was the beginning. We moved everything quietly. I opened a new savings account at a credit union in Chloe's name, and mine, just for safekeeping. The retirement funds were split, then shielded under a financial umbrella Reed would never think to check. Chloe helped me transfer the house title into a living trust, with her as secondary trustee. It meant the house couldn't be sold or leveraged without both our signatures. Then came the monitoring. I installed a small camera above the doorframe in my home office. Hidden in the molding, it caught just enough of the desk and cabinet where I kept paperwork. Nothing obvious, nothing flashy. Just a quiet eye watching. I made sure to leave bait folders labeled Estate Documents, Account Info Deed. They were clean copies, nothing with real signatures or routing numbers, but convincing enough to tempt someone who wasn't paying attention. And he wasn't. I watched the footage weekly. Late at night while Reed slept. Twice I saw him in the office rifling through drawers, slipping something into his pocket. I didn't confront him. I simply clipped the footage and added it to the folder Chloe was building, time-stamped, labeled, cross-referenced. By the time he disappeared, Sunday morning, Chloe had everything she needed. She filed the fraud report that afternoon, attached the footage, included digital logs from my bank that traced IP addresses back to Reed's laptop. By evening, she had Detective Laramie from the Savannah Police Department on the line. He'd worked elder fraud cases before. He didn't sound surprised, just tired, professional. "He thinks she's vulnerable," Laramie asked after Chloe laid out the case. "Good. That makes him predictable." I sat on the edge of my bed listening to the conversation through the speakerphone. My hands were folded in my lap. Calm, steady. Reed thought he'd won. That I was just another aging woman too sentimental to protect herself. But every step he'd taken was marked. Every dollar he'd moved was traced. And now he wasn't the only one watching. The night Chloe filed the fraud report, she stayed a little longer than usual. We sat in the kitchen with the overhead light dimmed, the window cracked just enough to let in the smell of rain. She sipped tea and waited, sensing I had something more to say. "He's not my blood," I said quietly. "Reed." She didn't answer right away. "I raised him," I continued, "since he was 5, but he wasn't mine, not really. Everett, my husband, had him with his first wife. She left when Reed was still in pull-ups. Didn't look back. Everett tried for a while on his own, but the boy had already learned something about abandonment. Then I came along." Chloe nodded slowly, eyes on me. "Everett asked me to promise, really promise, that I'd raise Reed like my own. And I did. God knows I did. I quit school. I learned how to braid his hair when he refused to go to the barber. I packed lunches, sat through every parent conference, bought second-hand bikes, and fixed the brakes myself. I signed every permission slip, wiped every fevered forehead. I took a breath, steadying the tremble in my voice. But Reed always kept one foot out the door. He'd smile, but never lean in. Call me Mom one day, Delia the next. Every hug felt borrowed. Still, I didn't stop. I kept showing up. Chloe reached over her hand, resting gently on mine. A month before the note, I overheard him on the phone, I said. He was pacing the porch. I was in the laundry room. He didn't know I could hear. I closed my eyes for a second. The words still stung. He said, "She's not even blood. She won't fight back." The room went quiet. The tea between us had gone cold. I've played that sentence over in my head 100 times, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. He meant it. And maybe that was the moment I finally let the illusion go. I stood, walked over to the drawer, and pulled out the folder Chloe and I had been building for months. The spine was thick now. Evidence timestamps, bank data, camera footage. "I wasn't born his mother," I said, voice low but firm. But I became one every day by choice. And now by choice, I'm letting him go. Chloe didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. We both knew what came next. It happened faster than I expected. The house, my house, was the first thing he tried to move. According to Chloe, he used my name on the documents, forged my signature with surprising confidence, and submitted everything electronically to a title company in Atlanta. He must have thought taking it out of town would lower suspicion. Distance always makes deception feel cleaner. But the trust was already in place. Chloe's name was embedded in the legal structure. 2 signatures required. Hers never came. And the moment the documents hit their system, the title officer flagged them for irregular formatting, routing the file straight to their legal department. The company called Chloe before they called anyone else. Within an hour, Detective Laramie had the access logs and IP addresses traced. Every click and submission led straight back to Reed's apartment across town, the one he'd claimed he couldn't afford to keep when he transitioned back into my house. The next morning, Chloe called me. "He used the address you gave him to fake a closing request," she said. "But he didn't realize the email bounced through our flagged server. You set the trap. It worked." I sat at the kitchen table, tracing the edge of my mug with one finger. I didn't feel victorious. Not exactly. It wasn't joy that stirred in me, just a quiet understanding that a line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Laramie called 2 days later. "We've got enough to move forward," he said. "Warrants are being prepared now. You did good, Delia. You were careful. You were smart." 2 weeks later, Reed was arrested outside a coffee shop, laptop in hand, wearing the sweatshirt I bought him 3 Christmases ago. I didn't watch the footage, but Chloe did. She said he looked stunned, like the world had turned upside down without warning. He's being charged with attempted identity theft, wire fraud, and elder exploitation. I let the phone rest against my ear as Laramie read off the list. The words didn't sting the way I thought they might. It wasn't hearing them that hurt. It was remembering how easy he made it all seem, how casual the betrayal had been, like it was a business transaction, like I was just paperwork to him. After the call, I placed the phone down beside the folder. I stood up, walked through the house slowly, and locked the front door behind me. There was one more thing I needed to do. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not from the air, but from the space between us. Reed sat across the aisle in a charcoal suit that didn't quite fit his hair longer than I remembered, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. He didn't look up when I entered. Not when I sat. Not even when the judge asked if I was ready to speak. I stood slowly, hands steady at my sides. "My name is Delia Madsen," I said, voice clear. "I am the legal owner of the property in question. I am the victim of financial exploitation and identity fraud. But that's not all I am." The judge nodded. I kept going. "I raised that man since he was 5. He was never just my husband's son. He was mine in every way I knew how to be a mother. I fed him. I taught him to tie his shoes, to say thank you, to look people in the eye. I stayed up through his fevers, through his heartbreaks, through every lie he thought I couldn't see." Reed shifted slightly, but still didn't meet my gaze. "You were never just my responsibility," I said, eyes locked on him now. "You were my son, even when you didn't want me." The room stayed silent for a long moment after I finished. The judge looked down, took a breath, and tapped her pen twice against the bench. "Mr. Madsen," she said finally, "this court finds you guilty on all counts." Her voice didn't waver, but something in her face softened. 7 years in state custody, she continued. Restitution to be determined. Reed still wouldn't look at me as the bailiff approached, not even when he stood, not even when the cuffs clicked around his wrists. As they led him away, I turned toward the exit and walked into the light spilling through the courthouse doors. It wasn't the ending I'd wanted, but it was an ending. The house felt different after the trial. Not haunted, just quieter in a way I could finally trust. I painted the walls in the hallway a warm amber and took down the old photos, replacing them with prints I'd bought from a street artist near Forsyth Park. I boxed up Reed's childhood keepsake, school art, worn-out sneakers, a cracked snow globe from a family trip he never talked about, and drove them to the donation center without ceremony. I didn't keep anything except the note. "Goodbye. You were never my family." I placed it in a simple black frame and set it above my desk, not out of spite but for clarity. A reminder of how far I'd come how easily trust can be mistaken for weakness, and how deeply I'd once loved someone who never truly saw me. The week after sentencing, I re-enrolled in nursing school part-time. It had been nearly 30 years, but the dream hadn't faded, just waited. My hands still remembered the motions, and my heart was steadier now, more rooted in purpose than anyone else's approval. On Wednesdays, I host lunch in my kitchen for a handful of women from the neighborhood, quiet, brave ones who've survived their own versions of betrayal. We share recipes, court updates, and sometimes just silence, which feels like safety. I don't tell them what to do. I just pass the bread, pour the tea, and let them speak when they're ready. The family I once imagined is gone, but something else is forming in its place, less perfect, more honest. A gathering of women who know what it means to lose and what it means to rebuild. Sometimes, the family you build crumbles, but from those ruins a new self can rise. And when someone says you were never my family, maybe they're finally right, and that's your freedom.